Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Guns Akimbo. The interesting thing that kind of popped into my brain the first time I saw this movie is what the heck does Akimbo mean? Akimbo is, for its most used definition, is to have your hands on your hips, and really that is to have arms akimbo. Really, for this movie, it takes the questionable dual wielding pistol definition of akimbo, which actually I don't believe that definition is actually correct. And some people might debate that. Really, also, like, akimbo is kind of like is could quite possibly be like the old west kind of like your hands are right next to the triggers of your gun and then gonna pull out your gun and shoot somebody like in an old fashioned cowboy west duel. Like that could be akimbo, like something like that where you're just kind of like preparing your hands to grab your weapons. That could be akimbo. But anyways, I just thought it was kind of interesting. Speaking of interesting, I thought this movie was visually interesting. How they tend to bring in graphics in this movie just made that extra added thing really fun. Especially when Miles is to go into his office, how we are to see that huge, like, cutting and splashing of a number of graphics to show this guy get into his job in an interesting looking way. Because we have Miles who is to work at a mobile game company, and so we have Miles who is to give us some kind of interesting visual things going on here. We have also, thank God, parts in time when there is to be texting dialogue going on in this film. And immediately we are to see this dialogue come on screen, which I'm like, oh, thank God. Could you imagine, like, that's a thing that I hated about a lot of other films where they would do this texting dialogue, but you would have to like zoom in on the phone, and hopefully you can pause just right to get every single one of these texts to know what's going on in this movie. It got annoying. Like, to have those kind of early parts of a lot of those movies where they are to have this text dialogue. That's when I think a lot of times movies still try to do that old phone conversation with one person in one part of somewhere and one person in the other, and then they're just going to add in like them trying to seemingly talk to one another, but they just kind of cut back and forth to these people. So we have also a death match throughout this movie going on consistently. We have a character who is called Nyx, which the actress who plays her, Weaver, oh my god, like, man, this girl is freaking amazing. I think she did go on to do the Babysitter Netflix films. And so, really, this girl, like, obviously has some kind of wide range of, like, things that she could do. She plays the innocent, and then also she can kill a bunch of people. I honestly think that this movie was also really good for Daniel Radcliffe. I think when Daniel did do this movie, kind of did help kind of break him out of the mold of like going into forcibly doing probably horror films or like some kind of ballparking realm of that, because really I think right out of Harry Potter, Radcliffe ended up doing a horror movie right after that, and then like he was just gone for several years. I think, after that. And but we're starting to see Daniel Radcliffe in a lot of interesting things. Like, I had seen him in Swiss Army Man. I thought that that movie was bizarre, but also fun. But so graphics and kind of there's a ton of movies that do feel fairly familiar to this. We could really go into this film and say this film feels probably just like the Gerard Butler movie Gamer, which some people probably have never heard of. Also, it could be similar to a movie called Arena 2011 with both Samuel L. Jackson and Kellen Lutz. Uh, Also, it could be in familiar territory of the Jason Statham film Death Race, because it has that kind of like cue these graphics kind of maneuver in, and plus also it has like this kind of spin of this story where it does kind of feel like that original Death Race movie with Jason Statham. Uh, I think I'm also like trying to think that there quite possibly might be like one or two other films that might be familiar to this, but really it's just a versus movie. It's an all out kind of uh, like forcing someone via this schism company that is to record all this almost in a like a Hunger Game style, but out in the open world. Uh, Here's also the good thing about this: every single person that is to be added in this movie seems to have a important role. Maybe they may not be uh, a long-winded character in this movie, but it's kind of interesting how they add everyone in and what their importance are. And it seems that there is a real true story behind this story. And so that's the thing that I like about this. Um, like there really is a reason for us to invest in both Nick's and both Miles's character, because we're rooting for Nyx because she's cool. She does all these cool action scenes in the beginning of this, and then we are to eventually root for Miles just because he is this guy who is like, please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. And so he is just the guy who just runs away is a bulk of what he does in this film. So I think it's about that time to go into that coveted double five time territory, and let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time you get to spoil this movie. So, very beginning of this film is a action sequence. Right after we are to get a guy named Richter who is to digitally tell us how the world, in his point of view, is like. So, we have two people battling it out, and we are to have these two announcers go and do a play-by-play. We have a two announcer team, one named Longshot and one named Curveball. So there to give us a play-by-play as to what is going on here. We have Valdim versus Nyx. Or Vadim. Vadim? I might be ill pronouncing that. So, Nyx is to be chased after via Vadim, and Nyx is to eventually go and swerve her car to shoot every single one of the men in Vadim's car and eventually hit Vadim last and swerve all the way around this car and and kill everyone. And really, that's just the quick and easy sequence here. We kind of have this interesting chase, but really it just comes down to a quick and easy mood point that Nyx is just going to be better than these people because we aren't quite sure who to, or we aren't quite sure what is going on in the early stages of this movie. Next, we have Nyx, who is going after a guy named Gask, Gask. So we have Nyx going after this guy who is actually a drug dealer, and we have this girl go in and just start killing everyone that is in this drug hideout, even to the point of her going and like just even killing any kind of people that don't even have weapons. She's just shooting through anybody. She doesn't care. Nyx goes and shoots down every single one of these drug dealers, and she is to leave Gask for last. For last? For last. Words today. They're a killer. Nyx at some point is to be pushed onto a table that has a decent amount of drugs on it. Nyx is to take a little whiffy poo of that drug, and Nyx is to go and power up herself to easily go and kill every single one of these characters, and then Gask is to steal drugs. So here's the thing: we have DeGraves, Grant Bowler, DeGraves. We have this detective who is chasing after Nyx and Schism to try and stop all this. DeGraves is to find out exactly where Nyx is, but Nyx is too quick. She is to get the heck out of there, and so DeGraves cannot get to her, and so game continues. So we are to put a pin in that now with Nyx's story, because Nyx now needs a new player, a new contender. So out of all the worst quite possible things that could be the next contender, so Miles is to be a mobile game creator or a mobile game worker, and he was to just go on to the Schism site and really just start doing a lot of cyberbullying, because evidently, like, he just had a lot of free time because his girlfriend is now his ex-girlfriend. So we have Miles, who decides to go and cyberbully people to see, like, where that would head to. Sadly enough, it heads to a mistake. Miles ticks off the wrong hombre, and Miles is to go and talk to Richter, the owner of this game, the guy who is to pick the players. So Richter is to talk to Miles and Miles is to talk smack back, and Richter is to tell Miles exactly what his IP address is, and Miles is like, oh my god, like I'm gonna close my computer and stop what I'm doing. Miles is to get a phone call and he freaks. Miles is, oh no wait, like he gets a text, not a phone call, because Miles, when he went to work, he went and starred some photo of Nova, which is his ex girlfriend. He was just kind of looking at her social media just to see what she was up to, and he stalked the crap out of her. And so, while Miles was getting ridiculed by his boss because he was kind of putzing around, Miles starred one of her photos, and Nova eventually called him out on it via a text, mentioning, hey, like, I saw you like one of my photos. And Miles is like, oh, yeah, like, I must have just butt liked it. I'm sorry. And Nova was like, right. So, are we gonna ever like spend any time together? And Miles is like, well, hey, like I'd like that, like, and so like, hey, cool, like you want to go to the park? Or Noah's like, hey, cool, you want to go to the park? And Miles is like, sure, 10 would be great. So Miles and Nova kind of talk to one another. There is this kind of will they, won't they thing immediately going on between these two, and but that all eventually uh, is to eventually come to an end, and Miles is to go back to his apartment to eventually have someone break into his apartment, grab his laptop, throw it to the ground, and that is of course Richter with his two goons. Richter is to have one of his goons knock Miles out because he is going to play with him. So we have one of Miles's goons grab Miles, punch him in the face, and it does nothing to Miles. The guy is like, yeah, I thought this would knock this guy out. Like, normally these kind of punches would knock someone out. And so Miles evidently has a thick skull. So this guy continues to punch Miles and nothing happens. The other one of his goons just tranks Miles in the neck, and then he is to fall over. Miles is to wake up in a surgical bed, and he is tied up. We have them, the two goons of Richter, drilling a thing into Miles's arm. Miles screams and yells. Richter's goons punches him out to make sure that he's out again. So Miles is to wake up and have just robe on, underwear, and some kind of t-shirt on under that, luckily enough. Miles is to get a text as if he can easily get it out of his, like, get it out from where, like, it was, mentioning that he is a part of Schism and that eventually, like, he will have a contender who is Nyx, and Miles is like, what the heck is a Nyx? So Miles doesn't know what the heck to do. He tries to put pants on and fails. He tries to pee, and like his Schwantz, his Johnson, just starts flinging all over the place. And Miles is like, I don't care as long as I don't shoot my dangalang off. So Miles is trying to do any number of things with these guns, like, attached to his hand, because these guns are bolted to Miles's hands, and like we have like this weird metal apparatus that like this thing is really like Home Depot'd onto Miles's hands. So like this guy's go and try to take a shower, buddy. It's gonna be real fun. So Miles has to basically go out in public with just his robe on and slippers because he can't even put on his normal shoes. But before that is to happen, Miles is trying to get his door open because he's having problems doing everything. He had a massive amount of problems doing a number of things, and at some point he was to like shoot a gun near his face, which made him barf because like he realized that he was getting he would like, yeah, firing a gun right next to your face, not a good maneuver. So it made him barf. So Miles is to try to get his door open. Nyx is to eventually make her way right to Miles. And Miles is to hide under one of his couches or like some of his furniture. Nyx is to basically go like, wow, you're not really all that professional about this, are you? Because Nyx is to go when she is to find out her contestant's name. Because we have Nyx, whose father is actually DeGraves. We'll find that out in this movie. So Nyx goes and sneaks into the police office dressed as a police officer to find out information about Miles, kind of knowing that, or kind of seeing that he has absolutely no rap sheet, and Nyx was confused about that. But Nyx pops into this guy's house to see a ton of action figures and special edition items, I'm sure, all over his wall, where Nyx is just kind of like, wow, this guy is... Miles is to tell Nyx, hey, yeah, like, if you're going to try and shoot me, please not try to shoot any of my action figures. All of these are really expensive, and please, like, don't shoot any of those. Like, what? Miles is desperate to have Nyx not shoot him, and we have Nyx who is just kind of laying this out as any number of any times that she has fought anyone. So Miles is to eventually grab his TV remote, adjust to some action movie that is to put out gunfire. Nyx is to via just the sound go and shoot Miles's TV. Miles is to run and make his way out of a window into a fire exit where he is to have huge problems getting down this fire exit. He's like sliding down into it and jumps off one part of this fire exit just to land in a huge bag of garbage, luckily enough. So Miles is to skate away from Nyx for a decent portion of time. Miles is to try and walk into public and mention to police officers that there are guns attached to him, and we have these cops who are to pull out their guns and like, hey guy, put the gun down, put the guns down, and Miles can't. We have eventually Miles, who is to accidentally fire off a round, and so we have the police officers who are starting to shoot Miles. Miles runs off, and one of the cops tried to chase him down and give him a stun gun treatment. So Miles is to get stun gunned. He falls to the ground and accidentally fires off another bullet. And we have a police officer who had got hit, I think, in the shoulder or like somewhere where it is bleeding. Miles tries to help the police officer, put pressure on his wound, and he apologizes profusely to him. And then Miles tries to run off. Miles eventually goes and hides, or goes and tries to text his, or talk to his girlfriend. So Miles gets to his girlfriend and is to slide into her car, and now Nova is very confused. What the heck is going on? So Miles is to explain to Nova that he had found a new girl named Nyx, and she is coming to kill him because he had been a part of Schism. And Nova's like, oh my god, why did you go with these men? And Miles is like, no, it's nothing like that. I'm forced to do this. And so we have Nova that is preparing, or we have Miles who's preparing Nova for the worst possible news. Miles is saying, hey, if I show you something, because we have his hands in his robe pockets, if I show you something, will you not freak out? And Nova's like, okay. Miles is to take out his guns and show Nova, and Nova is to freak out, get her mace, and spray Miles in the eyes. Miles gets out of the car, and he cannot see a thing, so Miles is to rush to this clothing container contraption that I guess is a if you are to donate clothes, you can toss this into this bin area in public, and eventually they'll go to collect it. We have Miles who is hiding in there eventually till he can, I guess, have his eyes be healed, or until he can see something. So Miles is to have, I guess, his eyes be fine. So Miles gets out of the clothing bin thing to have a pair of pants that I guess can fit him. So Miles is to have a homeless man called Glenjamin. Kind of a very kooky, odd guy, but Rhys Darby, I think it's Rhys Darby, the actor who is to play this guy, I've seen him in a number of different kind of movies and stuff, and usually he plays a lot of kooky guys, but I do really enjoy this actor. He was also in recently, Sweet Tooth. More than likely, you probably wouldn't have noticed where he was, but, his face was on screen at some point within that first season. Glenderman is seeing Miles get out of this clothing bin, and so Glenderman is talking all kinds of nonsense, and so Miles is to ask Glenderman, hey, could you actually just help me with something? Please? Could you dress me? Glenderman helps Miles dress him. Evidently, there is not an exchange of money happening, or there isn't any kind of way for Miles to give him some kind of something for his help. So we have Miles, who is now with this Glenderman. Glenderman is to offer Miles drugs, and also we have Miles seeing a hot dog on the ground, just a hot dog, no bun, and it kind of has kind of mustard on it. So Miles is to go and be like, hey, could you grab that hot dog and feed it to me? And Glenderman is like, no. Man, you're asking a lot from me, buddy. Dude, what are you going to make me do after that? Wipe your butt? And Miles is like, well, you know what? That actually might come in handy. And Glenderman is like, no. No, I am not going to do that for you. So we have Miles going and trying to dangle this hot dog between these guns, and then Miles is to finally get it and put it in his mouth and eat it. And Glenderman is like, well, hey, yeah, it's a good thing you ate that, because that's been sitting there for 8 months. Because Miles is like, what kind of hot dog is that? Because supposedly, I guess he eats I think he might have been vegan, or he eats certain kind of foods. So after this dialogue between Glenderman and Miles, Miles is to eventually push on to have to go out into the world and try to see how he can make it through this. We consistently have a lot of I think kind of maybe very generic footage of people saying all kinds of lines and stuff like that will probably they just probably had this one day of shooting of all these random people saying all these random things that eventually they fused into the film somewhere, just so that way they can get a number of different kind of takes of people saying any number of things that probably was probably taken out of context, and then somehow they figured out how to put it into context in this film. So Miles is to make his way to make it to work, because he is to realize there is a tracking device on this phone. And so Miles is to go to work to talk to one of his coworkers named Hadley, which is kind of his best friend. Both Miles and Hadley seem to Hadley is to be a guy that shoots Nerf guns at people. I guess we have Hadley who nails Daniel early in the head with a Nerf gun. So Miles is to tell Hadley, hey, you know what? I really need your help. I need to figure out how these people are tracking me on my phone. And I need to have this deactivated or something. And Hadley is like, well, yeah, it could be possible that they might have put a malware thing on your phone to track you. So we have Miles's boss, who had ridiculed him before, is now going and grabbing Miles to ridicule him again. And so Miles is to realize that more than likely he could die today. Miles is finally had enough with this boss and his consistent times of putting Daniel's character down or really just doing any number of things that Miles just hated. So Miles just finally pulls out his guns and just tells his boss like everything that he's ever always wanted to tell his boss. How his boss would hit on Nova while it was right in front of Miles. How really Miles hated the mascot of their mobile game, which he says is I think he says it's like a chipmunk, and Hadley corrects him and says it's a squirrel. And so Miles has just kind of had enough with his boss and tells him, like, hey, maybe from here on out, maybe you should stop ridiculing all your coworkers and maybe you should just treat them better. So we have Nix, who is to make it to Miles's office. Nick starts popping off some shots of some of these cubicles that are around Miles, and because Miles goes back for his phone, and Nick arrives to go and pop off some shots against Miles. And so Miles tells Hadley, hey, cover me while I run away. And Hadley's like, with what? Like, with my staple gun? So Hadley goes and shoots a Nerf gun into Nix's head and then apologizes profusely afterwards as Miles is to run off. So we have Miles in this, who is to consistently get in all kinds of just trouble after this. So pushing on into other portions of this film, we have eventually Nova, who is to go to the authorities about all this and mention what is going on with Miles. And they are to look at what had gone on with Miles in this whole schism thing and kind of laugh at it. So Nova is telling the police what is to go on and understand what Miles is going through, to the point of her calling him and now like apologizing that she had freaked out before, because she really didn't understand like why Miles had guns to his hands. And we have Miles who mentions is like, well, yeah, they like Home Depot'd my hands. So we have Miles, who is to try and hide out in a number of locations. And we have Miles, who is to also know that Nix is wanted by the police, the authorities. So Miles goes and hides into a junkyard and is to call the police to mention that since Nix is tracking him, that eventually she will probably be here in 10 minutes or so. Miles is to go and start walking through this junkyard to walk into a drug deal or a money swap drug deal thing going on. So we have these two different sides of these gangs who are asking, like, hey, who's this guy? Like, is he one of yours? Is he one of yours? Like, are you double agenting on me? Are you trying to betray me? Are you trying to have a traitor in our midst? Blah, 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 blah. So we have one of the gangsters mentioning, are you trying to F with me? And we have Miles, who's like, dude, I'm not trying to F with anybody. If anything, I'm just trying to leave. So Miles is just like trying to just say like, dude, I'm just trying to get out of here. Like, I'm heading for the exit. Like, I am not trying to cause any ruckus. If anything, like here shortly, eventually someone is going to come in here and cause a ruckus. So like, I'm going to try to get out of here. So we have Nyx, who is to pop out of the shadows with this huge gun that is to just spray upon everyone. And so Nyx is to uh, interrupt a countdown that is going on from 3, 2, and then Nyx pops in and starts randomly saying all kinds of numbers because she doesn't care what is going on with these people. She just cares to eventually kill them all off. So Nyx is to go and start killing every single one of these people off. They're all running like crazy. We accidentally have we have Miles, who is to shoot one of the men, and so really he is to do this by pure accident, and to mention to this guy that he had killed that there was no respawn, there was no one up for this guy, that this guy is now dead because of Miles. So Miles is to eventually get scooped up by the police, and we have DeGraves that is to grab Miles and kind of hear his story out. So we also have DeGraves that is to tell his story, that the guy who is to be the owner of Schism, Richter, was a gangster or some kind of villainous criminal person that was to have both the Graves and Nyx, who is his daughter, in a car with his daughter and his son. And the car had burnt up and killing both DeGrave's son and daughter, mother, or blah, wife and son, and DeGraves could only get Nyx out and save her. Because here's the thing, we had DeGraves and Nyx right before this, where Nyx was trying to chase after Miles. So Miles was doing this kind of like run around in this one section, and Nyx was to like try and see if she could like speed around this section to get to Miles, but she couldn't. Miles is just straight up awful at shooting, to the point of really just Nyx is even trying to help Miles shoot his gun to tell him exactly how to. Like, hey, like, there's this thing called a targeting system on your gun. There, like, you could really just aim with the gun and shoot me. Like, if you've ever thought about doing that, Miles actually tries to do that, and he almost, like, shoots his eye out while he, like, tries to get at Nyx. And like, it's kind of this funny chase around where Nyx is really just trying to make this much more exciting for her, but it's not. To the point of Nyx consistently like giving like Miles all these goofy names that Miles is like, what the heck does that even mean? like that doesn't even make any sense. Like, actually makes sense when you're gonna like ridicule me or like heckle me. And so uh, Miles is to get the runaround from Nyx, but Miles is to shoot off uh, a part of uh, this area that they are in to cause an explosion. Nyx is so focused on the explosion, and all of a sudden she's to have flashbacks of that car fire that Miles could have killed her just then, but didn't. He ran off and was kind of double checking if Nyx was okay, and then left. So, the Graves is to tell us this story, and so Miles is to understand why Nyx had hesitated when normally she would just go and kill everybody and their brother off. So, Miles is thinking that they are going to go to the hospital, and DeGraves is telling Miles, well, no, we're not going to get you to a hospital to get these guns off you. If anything, we are going to keep you out here as bait. Because Nyx wants you, and so she's going to have you, so we can get to Nyx, and also we can probably try to get to Richter. So DeGraves and his partner, who is Stanton, are to eventually park their car somewhere, and Stallion is to shoot DeGraves, and Miles is like, what the heck, man? Stanton is actually one of Richter's men. Richter is to give Miles a video that is to tell him to have not gone to the cops. And Richter is to also go and kidnap Miles's girlfriend and hold her hostage, so that way Miles decides to go and kill Nyx, to push him to try and take Nyx down instead of just like kind of just wasting time. So Miles is to talk to the recording, and Stanton is to tell Miles, dude, this is a pre-recording. Like, shut up. So Miles is to see that DeGraves was to have a bulletproof vest, but that did nothing for him, and that'll be foreshadowing to what is to happen later on in this movie. Miles is to eventually go on and desperately need to fight Nyx, and so Miles is to go with Nyx and have this one last shootout. So we have Nyx, who is to pop some pretty decent bullets into Miles, and he is to fall over. So they're like, yeah, like he died, great. And we have blah, 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 okay. Like I was thinking how exactly to play this. Because I do know that also Richter had gone on to shoot one of Miles's, shoot what is to be led to believe to be Nova, but it actually wasn't. It was Hadley. Richter is to be ashamed that I guess Miles was to not do what was a part of the rules, and so Richter ends up shooting Hadley, and Miles thought it was Nova, So Miles goes and takes off the cover to see was Hadley, his friend, instead of actually Nova. So, because we had Miles who is trying to deactivate his tracker because the police officers did that, and so we have Miles who had gotten shot by uh, 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 blah, 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 Nix. And so he is laying down all dead. We have the guys that are going and collecting Miles's body. And so Richter is also mentioning that he wants Nix also dead because Nix wanted to get out of this game. Nix wanted this to be her last fight, and then she was to retire herself because that was to make her enough money to be able to be done with all of this. And so we have we have Richter who wants to take Nix out because he's like, dude, like make sure she's dead as well because I don't want to deal with her. Like I wanted her dead for I don't know how long, but that just never happened. So we still have Richter with Nova. So even though after Miles is dead, they didn't release Nova. They just kept her, I guess, as a hostage. If anything was to go horribly awry, after this, after they were to have either Miles or Nix kind of. Let me pause for a second here. Let me pause for juicy second. Yeah, I need I needed that that intermission, that like reset for a second because it's like, man, like this is all like coming at me at one point. I need to go and kind of reset, reload, and so really what I was to say about Hadley on how Miles was to see his friend die was mainly because of Miles going to the police. So that's where that kind of heads into, because I needed a second to just go like, okay, from the police part on, where does all that go? So we have Miles and we have Nix who are at this showdown between the two of them, and we have Nix who is to pop some shots into Miles to be killed off. Credits roll, movie's over. Richter is saying, I want Nix dead, and that's a wrap. Miles is to be dead, sadly. Or what we are led to believe. So, Richter is to collect Miles's body to have Miles figure out exactly where Richter's headquarters is. Miles is to have two goons pull him out of this car, and then Miles shoots both of them through the body bag, killing them both. Luckily, it wasn't a see-through bag. We find out Miles had talked to Nix when Miles was at the location of DeGrave's death. Miles was to have Nix show up and to tell her, hey, yeah, like, look over here, your father is dead, and I know who killed him. Nix is looking over her dead father's body, and so Miles is to tell Nix that Richter is a part of Schism, and Richter is to be involved in Nix's mother and brother's murder, and so Nyx needs to avenge her family's death to go after Richter. And so Miles is like, well, hey, are you going to help me? Are you going to help me with this? And Nyx is like, well, yeah, sure. So Nyx is to put the bulletproof vest on Miles, and Miles is to uh, have Nyx help him get redressed because, of course, he can't dress himself. So Nyx shoots Miles, and Miles specifically tells Nyx only shoot him once in the chest, only one time. Repetitiously, he says one time. But Nyx, like, was consistently, I guess, like, just off in her own head, doing God knows what. And so we have Nyx, of course, just lighting bullets into Miles, and then he falls over. So Miles is at Richter's headquarters, and so now is Nyx. So Nyx and Miles are working together to make it through these headquarters to kill everyone. We are to see the consistent clicking through this entire movie, how many bullets that Miles's character is to have, and I think that's really interesting. How many like numerous bullet accidents he could have had, but also I'm kind of like I'm not quite understanding how big of a clip a gun like this should actually have. Like, is a normal like revolver or a normal like gun, is it capable of holding 50 bullets at one time? When watching any other action movie, like, man, do I see them probably have a whole like 12 bullets, because there is that movie called 12 Rounds. Uh, like, I assumed that a gun can hold very few number of bullets, not something as big as 50, but I guess that's like just like, well, they probably like rigged the gun to hold more, like, I don't know, like maybe that whole like gun attachment that this guy is to have like has some kind of bullet housing, so that he can obtain more bullets, I guess. Maybe that's why his thing is so long and attached to his arm, to justify the number of bullets that are to be used with this gun. I'm assessing. So, Nyx and Miles is to go through and start blazing through a lot of these people, eventually getting to Richter's two most notable henchmen. We have eventually the guy that is to go after Nyx with a hammer in his hand. Because bizarrely, we have this guy who is to consistently have a hammer on him. I don't know why, but we also have this guy who is to make hammer puns, to where we have this guy trying to fight Nyx, and he's like, "Stop, hammer time!" like, and so Nyx is to eventually, while fighting this guy, lose some fingers, and so she's like, "Well, Friday night has gotten a little bit lonelier," mentioning that she used to do a little bit of that, a little bit of the finger tingling, if you know what if you know what I'm getting at, finger tingling feeling, I guess. So, but we eventually have both of these goons who are to also be killed, and so Nyx and Miles are to eventually be cornered, and there are bullets coming from everywhere, from any number of all of these henchmen that Richter is to have. So we have both Miles and Nix who are stuck. And like I was kind of expecting Miles and Nix to come out of this like both of them being alive, eventually both of them having a relationship after this that just kind of seems fairly weird or odd, but still. And immediately after this scene, that just kind of just dashes all of that because we have uh, Miles who is to tell Nova, yeah, I found a new girl. Her name is Nyx. And so I was kind of thinking, like, well, maybe there's going to be this, like, bizarrish relationship that happens at the end of this movie. But it doesn't. So, Nyx is to decide, you know what, hey, like, go and kill Richter for me. Nyx is to go cowboy up and just machine gun her way. Well, not machine gun. It's kind of a different modified gun, whichever. So Nyx goes through and just starts guns a-blazing, going through all of these goons, killing all of them off. And we have Nyx, who is starting to get pelted by some of the bullets. We have this bizarrish guy in this S&M horse donkey-ish like mask that is to start lighting up bullets into Nyx. And so Nyx is to pull open her coat to see that there is a bomb that is connected to her chest. She is to pull the bomb lever or whichever because she is to get shot. And Bombardier goes Nyx, and she is to kill everyone else that is left. So Richter is to try to get away from all of this because he's like, dude, I'm going to have to get out of here because it seems like everybody else is getting killed off. And we really start to see that Miles' bullet count is starting to really tick away. So Miles is to make it to this roof spot where Richter and Nova are to be alone there because Miles and Nyx had killed everyone else off. So we have the classic villain talking to Miles, and eventually this just leads to this kind of like standoff between Miles and between Richter. We have accidentally Miles who is to shoot off his gun, and that is to be his very last bullet. So we have Richter who's like, man, you really aren't good at this, are you? But we have Nova who goes and tries to get free of Richter, tries to get free by hitting him and then running off. We have Miles who is trying to hit Richter with these guns, trying to like gun slap him or gun hit him or just kind of use like his forearms and his these guns to try and continue to hit this guy pretty decently hard. And we have both Miles and Richter. Miles is to get Richter pretty good and beaten up to the point of him being almost against the end of this roof where there's just this little gap and then fall to your death kind of thing. So Miles is to grab Richter, hoist him up to have him clutch on to the very ends of this building. And so we have Richter who's mentioning to Miles, dude, like, this isn't going to end with me. Like, we're going to set franchises up all over the world. And Miles is like, okay, well, that's great. Because I'm going to go and I'm going to take down every single one of these spots and be the end of not only you but schisms. And so Miles is to go and crunch with his forearms Richter's hands, and Richter is to fall to his death. So Miles had been riddled with bullets by Richter because Miles was trying to bum rush Richter, but Richter kept shooting bullets into Miles because Miles had no bullets left. So Miles is to fall to the ground in some kind of shock, and he is daydreaming about Nova coming to and running to him and hugging him and like just having this immediate just love affair with Miles. But actually, we have Nova who wants to be like 20 feet away from Miles and wants nothing to do with him because like shock or just post or just the trauma of all this and the stress of it all just caused her to want to be a million miles away from Miles. So, but the police eventually get called. Eventually, they are to wrap up this whole case, and it seems that eventually Miles is to understand that schisms is to keep going on. There seems to be all kinds of different locations, countries, and whatever still doing schisms. And so Miles, who eventually is to feel better, is to want to go and find all these locations that they're putting this game together and snuff them out. We find Miles also. Oh, and by the way, Richter, before he was to die, Miles shoves Nix's middle finger into Richter's mouth and then has him drop. That was kind of like people were like, "Ew," and I was like, that kind of seems silly, but I guess that's the only thing really left of Nix that was left after the explosion was just her middle finger. So, uh, we have Miles who is to find out because Miles was to talk to Nova in the early parts of this movie to when they were both together with that first meetup. Miles is to tell Nova to follow her dreams, to kind of just give up everything and just become an artist like she had wanted. And Nova is like, well, yeah, but like, if anything, like I think that like that'll just be like me burning through money, and blah blah blah, like all these like reasons why she was not going to do it. But Miles is to eventually seek out that after all, Nova did become a comic book artist, and she was to do the real life adaptation of Guns Akimbo and have Miles be her like her main character. And so basically Miles got his story out there in comic book form, and so really I guess like a lot of people who had liked this guy named Guns Akimbo, which they were to know as Miles because they kept calling him these like goofy names. We also have at some point where Miles was to try and have a TI girl go and find something out for him, and we have the girl who's like, "Oh my God, you're Guns Akimbo!" Like, could we get a selfie? And Miles is like, "Yeah, sure." And then immediately, as she is to pose for the selfie, Miles is to walk away out of the photo, and this girl's like, "Ah." And then eventually she is to be with her group of friends, mentioning that, "Hey, yeah, like he was in here earlier. Like I met him. Like, too bad you don't have a photo of him, but it is what it is. So, yeah, so Miles is to go off on his new adventure to hunt down all these other schism like knockoffs because eventually there is going to be another one of them. So I was assessing or assuming that maybe they were trying to set this up to have there be a sequel, but it just didn't quite get there. Like maybe eventually down the line they're going to quite possibly revisit this, maybe at a cheaper budget or maybe in some kind of different kind of way. But yeah, like maybe like I'm assuming they were probably thinking that they were going to make a decent amount of money. Like when this movie was to be released, like this movie was one of those that had uh, like a pretty prominent like showcasing out there. Like I think with all the other movies that were going on at that time, I think this movie visually did stand out, and I think it was at a pretty decent rung with all these other things that were to come out. I think at the exact same time. But with that said, I did not realize that I was going to be talking for 1 hour and 11 minutes. I think I even talked more than the film actually. So I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.